My parents mocked me and told me to stay away from their retirement party because I was a loser. I stayed away as they wanted. But when they encountered a problem with the venue on the day of the party, they needed me. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. I wasn't born a disappointment, but somewhere between middle school and my late 20s, my parents decided that's what I was. I remember being 10 years old, clutching a spelling bee trophy, and seeing pride in their eyes. That was the last time I felt like I made them proud. After that, it was all downhill. Wrong major, wrong job, wrong tone of voice, wrong kind of ambition. My older brother, Matt, was the benchmark. Law school, promotions, tailored suits. He followed the blueprint. I, apparently, was the ink stain that blurred the lines. I'd always felt like a side character in my own family. They didn't say it outright, but the way my dad's face pinched when I spoke about my freelance projects said it all. The way Mom changed the subject when I mentioned I was between jobs. Even the way Matt spoke to me, half smirk, half pity, made it clear I was the family burden. The loser they loved but didn't respect. The night they told me not to come to the retirement party, we were sitting in their living room. Dad had just finished pouring himself a scotch and turned to me like he had something profound to share. "Listen," he said, like he was easing into diplomacy. "We just want the night to be simple. You know, no distractions." I blinked, confused. "Distractions?" I asked. "You know what your father means," Mom cut in. "It's a classy event. We don't want any awkwardness." Then she added, under her breath, but loud enough, "Just don't embarrass yourself." Matt laughed, quiet, smug. I felt my stomach clench, the way it always did when I was cornered by my own family. I nodded slow. I didn't even argue. What was the point? But the truth was, I had something they didn't know. 6 months prior, after years of bouncing between odd jobs, I landed a role as a senior property manager at Arcadia Holdings, one of the top real estate firms in the city. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to see if I could succeed without their validation, without their shadow over me. The offer had come after a grueling 3-month interview process, multiple tests, and a panel interview. I earned it, and I kept it to myself like a secret flame, quiet, steady, real. A week after I started, I came across a venue booking for a retirement party. The name didn't ring a bell at first, but when I saw the guest of honor listed as Mr. Roger Hale, my father, I nearly choked on my coffee. My brother's name was on the event request, submitted under a limited liability company he apparently used for side gigs. It was clever, almost like they didn't want me to know, almost like they knew who really owned the keys to the venue. I stared at the document, heat rising in my chest. That party, my exclusion from it, was booked under the very company that now paid my salary. I could have rejected it right then, found some obscure policy violation, but I didn't. I let it pass. A part of me wanted to see how far they'd go pretending I didn't exist. Another part wanted to test myself. Would I still do the right thing, even when they did everything wrong? The following weekend, I had dinner with some coworkers, people who knew me only as the confident guy who ran logistics like a machine. They didn't know the version of me my family saw. Uncertain, muted, never quite enough. Jana, another manager, raised a toast to me for securing a deal with a new developer. "You're damn good at what you do," she said, clinking her glass against mine. I smiled, but it felt hollow. I still heard Mom's voice in my head. "Just don't embarrass yourself." One night, after a long day of back-to-back meetings, I found myself replaying the scene in their living room over and over again. The smirk on Dad's face, the condescension in Matt's tone. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hands behind my head, feeling like a kid again. Except this time, I wasn't helpless. I had power. I just didn't know what to do with it yet. Then came the final insult. I was over at Matt's place, supposedly to drop off some old books he'd left at my apartment. His wife, Claire, invited me in. "We were just talking about you," she said, smiling innocently. Matt, beer in hand, didn't miss a beat. "Yeah, we were wondering if you were still doing whatever it is you do now." Must be nice not having real responsibilities. He laughed like it was a joke. Claire giggled awkwardly. I wanted to say something sharp, something surgical. But instead, I just nodded. Yeah, must be nice, I said, my voice even. Later that night, I stood on my apartment balcony, staring at the skyline my company helped shape. I thought about the buildings I had a say in, the contractors who reported to me, the CEO who shook my hand in the hallway and called me an asset. None of them would believe I was considered a failure by my own blood. And so, I stayed away from the party, just like they asked. I kept my mouth shut. I played the role of the invisible son, the family disappointment. But something inside me had shifted. The difference now was that my silence wasn't born of shame. It was choice. It was control. And when the day of the party came, I had a feeling it wouldn't go quite the way they'd planned. Because sometimes, when you throw someone away, you don't realize how much you might need them later. For weeks, I kept a low profile, but inside, I was a pressure cooker with a ticking timer. I started arriving at the office earlier, leaving later, throwing myself into the details of my work like it could drown out the hum of my family's dismissal. On paper, I was thriving. Managing multiple high-value properties, overseeing tenant negotiations, even coaching junior associates. But under all that, a resentment was building. Every meeting I chaired, every spreadsheet I cleaned up, every lease I signed. Part of me whispered, they'll never see this version of you. They wouldn't even believe it if they did. What made it worse was how normal they kept acting. No calls, no apologies. The last conversation still sat in my head like a bruise. No one reached out to say maybe they'd gone too far. Matt sent a one-word text the week after. Cool. As if his smirking disregard could be wrapped up in a shrug. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on the one place I had control, work. That's when the event notification landed in my inbox again, this time flagged for attention. Hale Retirement Gala, final confirmation pending fire safety approval. I blinked. The venue, Hillside Estate, our premium downtown property, was a flagship location, often booked months in advance. It had just undergone a routine inspection, and the city fire marshal had updated a few codes. All events now required an internal manager sign-off for occupancy compliance. Guess whose desk that landed on? I called up the client name again, double-checking. Hale Brothers Investments, LLC. The request was handled under my division. I stared at the screen, hands frozen on the keyboard. The irony was too clean, too cruel. My father's retirement party, one I'd been told to stay far away from, was now hanging in limbo, and I was the one holding the strings. Jana peeked her head into my office just then. You look like someone kicked your puppy, she said, dropping a file on my desk. Something up? I hesitated, then spun the screen toward her. She read the event request and raised her brows. Your family. I nodded. They don't know I work here. Jana's mouth opened slightly. Wait, are you serious? I nodded again, slower this time. She leaned against the desk, crossing her arms. So they're asking a son they ghosted to approve their big celebration? She shook her head. People are wild. I haven't told them I got this job, I said quietly. They still think I'm doing some gig stuff. They called me a loser. Told me not to show my face. Jana tilted her head. And now you get to be the gatekeeper. I nodded, feeling equal parts ashamed and vindicated. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know, I replied. I guess I'm hoping they'll out themselves before I have to say anything. For a few days, I let the request sit. I didn't decline it. I didn't approve it. I just waited. Part of me wanted to believe there might be some decency left, that maybe someone, Matt, at the very least, would come clean and acknowledge the connection. But nothing came. It was business as usual. They really thought I was no one. On Friday, I walked past the event space on my lunch break. The setup team was already preparing the floral arrangements. I recognized a few familiar names on the itinerary. Dad's old corporate partners, some family friends I hadn't seen since high school. I stood in the doorway, watching them lay out linen-covered tables and stack gold-rimmed plates. And it hit me how much they wanted the show. Not the relationships, not the reflection, just the optics. The perfect party. The curated legacy. My mother would be in pearls. My father would make some grand speech. Matt would probably raise a toast. I'd be a ghost in the room, and they'd be relieved not to see me there. The next day, Jana caught me zoning out in the elevator. "You've been quiet," she said. "Still thinking about the party?" I nodded. "You know what's wild?" I said. "I've dreamed about proving them wrong for years. About finally becoming someone they'd respect. But now that I'm here, now that I'm actually someone, I don't even want their validation anymore." Jana looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "That's not wild. That's growth. The dream changes once you realize it was never about them." That night, I sat with her words. I looked through old emails, old resumes, old rejection letters. I remembered scraping together freelance contracts, staying up all night editing real estate walkthroughs, trying to make a name for myself while my parents laughed behind closed doors. I remembered the Christmas dinner where Dad said, "Maybe you're just not cut out for responsibility," in front of the whole family. I remembered the silence that followed. No one stood up for me. No one disagreed. And yet, somehow, I had still managed to find a place for myself. Not because of them, but in spite of them. I didn't need their party. I didn't need their praise. What I needed, desperately, was to stop giving them power over how I saw myself. That's when I made the decision. If they wanted access to that venue, they'd have to go through the same protocol as everyone else. No favors. No shortcuts. No apologies accepted retroactively. The space wasn't available. Not until they respected the person they had tried to erase. I opened the event request, clicked through to the notes, and added one line in red, pending further documentation. Capacity compliance unverified. Manager approval required. Then I closed my laptop. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt aligned. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was responding. Quietly. Firmly. Like someone who had nothing left to prove and everything left to protect by the time Monday rolled around. The tension inside me had curdled into something heavier. Resentment mixed with a weird sense of power. I sat in my office with the blinds half drawn, watching sunlight bounce off the glass of nearby buildings, thinking about the gala that was inching closer by the hour. My inbox pinged every 20 minutes with updates from catering, guest services, and logistics, all tied to my father's party. It was like the universe had handed me front row seats to my own exclusion. Still, I kept things professional. I reviewed floor plans, flagged the fire code issue again, and forwarded everything to my assistant with instructions. Do not approve until I say so. It was a paper trail I wanted to keep clean. No personal fingerprints. Just policy. But inside, I wasn't calm. I was boiling, quietly. The way you do when you've been disrespected for so long that anger no longer looks like shouting. It looks like withdrawal, silence, distance. That afternoon, I got a call from my mother, voicemail only. Her voice was light, fake sweet, the kind she used when talking to people she wanted something from. "Hi, sweetheart," she began, like nothing had happened. "Just confirming everything's moving along for Friday. So excited. We're so proud of your father. It's a really big deal for the whole family." She paused. "Anyway, give us a call when you get this. You've always been so great with details. Love you." She ended it with a sing-song lilt that made my skin crawl. There was no mention of the last conversation. No acknowledgement of how they'd told me to stay away. No apology. Just a pretend version of motherhood dressed in ribbons and lace. I didn't call back. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to my personal phone, just in case I ever needed to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. I played it twice, listening to the way she slid "sweetheart" into a request like it was currency. I could hear the desperation underneath it. Something had gone wrong, and now I was useful. And when I was useful, suddenly I was family again. Later that evening, I went to my usual gym, put in an hour of cardio, and sat in the sauna with a towel draped over my head, trying to exhale my frustration. A man beside me, late 40s, weathered, worn, started talking about his daughter's wedding. "They treat me like a checkbook until something goes wrong," he said, laughing bitterly. "Then they remember I'm a person." I didn't respond, but his words stuck with me. Parents and children, power and performance, love wrapped in obligation. It all sounded too familiar. When I got home, I found another message, this time from Matt. Just a casual, "Hey, call me. Quick thing about the venue." I stared at it for a long minute. There was no apology in that either. No shift in tone. Just entitlement, business as usual. Like I owed them something. I didn't call him either. Instead, I poured myself a drink, sat on my couch, and went through the email threads again. I looked at the timestamps, the phrasing, the way every message was written with the assumption that I was a nameless staff member, someone to be managed. No names, no personal notes. Just, please confirm. We need this adjusted. Attach the invoice. They didn't know who they were talking to. That was the part that kept circling in my mind. They didn't even care enough to find out. The next day, I finally said something to Jana. We were standing outside the building, waiting for our coffee order, when I muttered, "They still haven't apologized." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean your family?" I nodded. "My mom left a voicemail acting like we're best friends. Matt's texting like nothing happened. They're trying to use me without realizing I'm the one in charge." Jana sipped her latte. "So what are you gonna do?" I shrugged. "I want to help, but I also want them to understand they don't get to just rewrite history." She tilted her head. "You ever think maybe helping them would make it worse? Let them keep believing they can treat you like a backup plan." That hit me like a slap, not because she was wrong, but because she was too right. I stared into my coffee and said quietly, "I don't want to be that guy anymore. The one they only call when they're desperate." Jana put her hand on my shoulder. "Then don't be. Let the system handle them." I nodded slowly, letting the thought settle. I could feel something shifting again, not just in how I saw them, but in how I saw myself. I wasn't some underdog anymore, clawing for their attention. I was a grown man with authority, discretion, and boundaries they had no idea how to navigate. By midweek, my assistant flagged the event file again. "Still pending," she said. "They've emailed twice. Want me to respond?" I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. "Not yet," I said. "Let them wait." She nodded, no questions asked. That night, lying in bed, I imagined the party. I imagined the panic setting in when they realized something wasn't lining up. The frantic calls, the fake concern, the way they'd scramble to fix a problem they thought they could talk their way out of. And I imagined myself, sitting quietly at my desk, letting the machine work the way it was supposed to. No emotions, no revenge, just consequences. Friday morning arrived like a slow breath held too long. I sat in my office, suit jacket draped over the back of my chair, staring at my computer screen as the minutes crawled by. On paper, everything was in order. Emails logged, phone calls documented, fire code regulations enforced. But underneath that perfect corporate facade was a storm I'd been waiting to unleash. Not with fury or shouting, but with something colder, composure. I'd made peace with my role in this, or so I thought, until my mother called again. I let it ring twice, just to feel the rhythm of her desperation before answering. "Mom, sweetheart." Her voice was bright, brittle. "We've had a small hiccup with the venue. Nothing huge, just a last-minute thing. But the team said someone from management has to approve the adjustments. And when I found out you worked there," I said, "oh, thank God, that's my son." She laughed, and I could hear the hollow echo of forced cheer behind it. "So, you can take care of it, right?" I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. "You told me not to come to the party." She went quiet for a beat. "Oh, don't be like that. You know we were just trying to keep things simple." "No," I said, steady now. "You were trying to keep me out of sight. Because I embarrassed you. Because I wasn't Matt. You didn't think I had anything to offer." "Don't be dramatic," she said, her voice tightening. I smiled, though there was no joy in it. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being direct." She exhaled sharply, like I'd slapped her. "We're your parents, for God's sake. We raised you. And you mocked me," I replied. "You laughed in my face. You called me a loser. You told me to stay away. And now that you need something, you're calling me your sweet boy again." "I didn't mean, you did," I said. "You meant every word. And now I mean mine. The venue is unavailable." Silence stretched across the line like a noose. "You're being cruel," she finally said, her voice sharp and wounded. "This is your father's night. Everything's riding on this. And you'd sabotage it to prove a point." "No," I said calmly. "I'm enforcing policy, just like we do for every client. You're punishing us. I'm holding you accountable." Her voice dropped, bitter now. You've always been too sensitive. That's your problem. No, I said again, louder this time. My problem was that I let you treat me like nothing for years. My problem was that I believed you every time you said I wasn't enough. But not anymore. I ended the call. My hand trembled slightly as I placed the phone down. Not from guilt, but from release. For the first time in my life, I hadn't backed down. I hadn't laughed it off, changed the subject, or pretended their words didn't cut. I'd stood my ground, and it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like closure. I walked into Jana's office without knocking. She looked up, brows raised. It happened. I nodded. She called me sweetheart again. Said I was her best boy. Jana let out a low whistle. Wow, they really think reality bends for them. They thought I'd be so grateful for the attention, I'd forget everything else. And? She asked, watching me carefully. I told her the venue was unavailable, just like she told me to stay away. Jana leaned back in her chair and gave a slow, approving nod. That's a full circle if I've ever seen one. I sat down across from her, the weight of the conversation still sitting on my chest. Why does it still feel sad? Because you still care, she said simply, even when they don't deserve it. We didn't talk much after that. She handed me a folder. We ran through some logistics, but her presence grounded me in a way I hadn't expected. She didn't tell me I was right or wrong. She just listened. And in that listening, I felt more seen than I had in 29 years of family gatherings. Around 2 p.m., my phone blew up. A string of messages from Matt, each one angrier than the last. What the hell are you doing? You're screwing Dad over. We trusted you. This is disgusting. I read every single one, then put my phone face down. The backup venue was a generic hotel ballroom. Plain, impersonal, rushed. I heard later that the AV equipment failed mid-toast. The food was late. Half the guests left early. I wasn't there. I spent the evening with Jana and a couple of colleagues at a rooftop bar downtown. We drank, we laughed, we talked about anything but family. At one point, someone asked about my weekend plans, and I simply said, nothing urgent, just some overdue boundaries. As I walked home under the city lights, the weight in my chest didn't lift completely, but it shifted. It was no longer shame. It was something stronger. Something closer to peace. By Saturday morning, the silence was louder than any insult they'd ever thrown my way. I woke up late, the sun already warming my apartment windows, and checked my phone out of habit. 37 unread messages. 12 from Matt. 3 from Mom. The rest were a mix of unknown numbers, likely friends of the family or people I hadn't heard from since high school. The texts weren't curious, they were furious. Screenshots of angry Facebook posts. Snide comments about pettiness and family betrayal. And one voice message from my dad, just 30 seconds long, full of controlled fury. I sat at my kitchen counter, drinking coffee in yesterday's clothes, staring at my phone like it had grown fangs. It wasn't the backlash that stung. It was the predictability. Of course they'd turn me into the villain. Of course they'd rewrite the story to suit their shame. I'd ruined their fairy tale. No, they had. But I'd refused to patch it up for them. And now I was the scapegoat. I pressed play on the voicemail. My father's voice came through clipped and cold. I don't know what kind of man you think you've become, but this was beneath you. You had a chance to do the decent thing. Instead, you embarrassed your family. I hope whatever satisfaction you got from this was worth it. No name, no son, just a business tone, like I was one of his failed interns. I deleted the message. The truth was, I'd expected this. I knew they'd take the fallout and throw it all on my shoulders. What I hadn't anticipated was how numb I'd feel in the face of it. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just done. It was like watching a house burn down after you'd already moved out. The loss was real, but it no longer belonged to me. Around noon, Jana called. Hey, she said gently. You okay? Still standing. I replied, managing a dry smile. I saw some posts. People are mad. They'll get over it, I said. Or they won't. Either way, I'm not going back. She paused. You did the right thing. Maybe not the easy thing, but definitely the right one. That meant more than I could say. I told her thanks, and we made plans for dinner later that night. Something low-key. I needed a distraction. Before heading out, I checked my email. There it was, a final report from the event team. Client reported unsatisfactory experience due to venue denial. Recommending standard reimbursement for deposit per cancellation policy. I approved it with one click. I felt nothing. Not anger, not guilt. Just a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Still, the next day, I got another text from Matt. You know they're humiliated, right? Dad didn't even make it through his own speech. You should have been there. You should have fixed it. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I typed back one sentence. I wasn't invited. Remember? He didn't respond. That night, I sat on my balcony with a beer and tried to take stock of what I'd really lost. The illusion of a loving family that had cracked years ago. Their respect? That was never mine to begin with. The only real shift was that now, I was the one setting the terms. The phone stayed silent for the rest of the evening. No apologies. No acknowledgement. Just more silence. But for once, I didn't feel like I was drowning in it. I was floating. Free. A week passed. Then two. No calls. No unexpected visits. Just the occasional passive-aggressive social media post from my mother about family values and being gracious even when others aren't. She'd post old family photos with captions like, "Some people forget where they came from," conveniently cropping me out or tagging everyone except me. Subtle as a slap in the face. I didn't respond. Not publicly. Not privately. I watched them dig themselves into a narrative where I was the cold-hearted son who chose pride over peace. And maybe I did. But what they never understood, what they refused to see, was that peace doesn't come from swallowing your dignity to keep someone else comfortable. I wasn't proud of what I'd done. I wasn't even sure I could call it revenge. It was more like preservation. A last, desperate attempt to prove that I wasn't invisible. One afternoon, I ran into an old family friend at a local bookstore. Ms. Alden, my mom's church friend, all pearls and perfume. Well, she said, her tone sweet and venomous. Heard there was some drama at the party. Shame you missed it. I gave a polite smile. I didn't miss it. I was told not to come. Her eyes narrowed. That's not what I heard. I'm sure, I said, then added, sometimes people rewrite the truth when the original version makes them look bad. She sniffed, clearly not expecting pushback. You know, your mother says you're going through something. That it's just a phase. I chuckled. If standing up for myself is a phase, I hope it lasts the rest of my life. I left her there in the aisle, stunned and speechless, and walked out into the warm afternoon sun with something unfamiliar blooming in my chest. Confidence, not arrogance. Just the quiet knowledge that I no longer needed to shrink for anyone's comfort. Back at work, life rolled on. Projects moved forward, tenants came and went, new deals emerged. No one there knew the full story, and I liked it that way. At Arcadia, I wasn't the black sheep. I was the guy who made things happen. The fixer. The decision maker. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place. I had already earned it. One evening, Jana and I sat on a rooftop patio, watching the skyline flicker to life. You've been quieter lately, she said. Less to say, I answered. More to think about. Do you regret it? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I sipped my drink and looked out over the city. The same city where I had spent years proving myself in silence. The same skyline where my father's name had meant everything once, before mine quietly surpassed it in reach, if not in recognition. No, I finally said. I don't regret it. I regret that it had to come to this. But I don't regret choosing myself. Jana nodded, her expression unreadable. Then she said, You know, there's a difference between cutting people off and drawing a line. I looked at her. I didn't cut them off, I said. I just stopped standing where they could swing. We stayed quiet after that. The kind of silence that doesn't press, doesn't poke, just sits with you. And I realized, in that moment, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for a phone call, an apology, a miracle. I had stopped waiting. I had started living. The final straw wasn't even dramatic. Just a card in the mail, 2 weeks after the party. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. My mother. Inside was a short note. You'll regret this one day. Families are forever. Don't say we didn't try. No love. No signature. Just a veiled threat disguised as sentiment. I folded the card and dropped it in the trash. Families are not forever when love comes with conditions. When respect is a reward for compliance. When silence is the cost of belonging. I didn't regret protecting my peace. I regretted that it took me so long to believe I deserved it. Have you ever been treated like you were nothing until someone suddenly needed you? If you've stood in the shadows of your own family, waiting to be seen, this story is for you. Drop a comment and tell me, what boundaries did you set to finally reclaim your worth? Because sometimes the loudest way to speak is to walk away. If this hit home, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more real stories about family, betrayal, and finally choosing yourself. See you soon in our next story.